And, this is a real hot button, especially with the interest rates like they are, is, there's more case than ever to say what actually makes sense. A lot of the real estate world is like, well, it's always a fantastic to buy. Well, the fact of the matter is it's never and always for someone, right? And we don't know anyone's situation or anything like that. So I'm actually not a homer. My background's in economics, all in finance. I'm not a homer as as someone that is a beneficiary of the real estate world, that you should do anything that's not right for you at all. Like for any short-term gain or sacrifice or anything like that. I'm an advocate of having all the cards in a conversation to make a decision. And that's what I really want to see if we can get to, because I actually don't know if we know the answer, right? And I think it becomes from your perspective. There's a lot of things in play when you talk about renting a home versus owning. And it's not, a lot of people talk about it just like it's your first buy from being a younger person that's always rented. But there's a lot more in play there. I mean, relocation, I don't care if you're 7 years old or 20, all these same factors still really matter. And you're gonna hit liquidity, right? Like both of these two situations have a cash requirement. It's not just, there's a lot of, I saw this a lot in the corporate world. There's a lot of people in finance and in marketing and whatever industry that make a lot of money per month, especially dual income households that can pay a very high monthly payment. But a lot of W-2 environments do not provide a feasible way, I don't care how much money you make, to save your way to having a one time of $50, $70, $80, $90,000 to put down one time on a home. So I think liquidity is one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest. I think appreciation, potential gain to combat risk mitigation. Did you forecast this right? What if I buy and the interest rates drop? And then people are like, well, you could always refinance. Do you buy new construction or resale, which we're gonna get into? So there's a lot of things in play here. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at if you're gonna show numbers, right? Everyone says well, not everyone, but a lot of people say you have to put down 20%. These days, even if you have it, I mean, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of cash. The average home is not $200,000. So I wanted to look at maybe, if you're the 20% person, fantastic, right? If you're higher than that, fantastic. But I thought it might be more realistic if I showed numbers to look at 3.5%, 5% down, and 10% down, which are all feasible, and say, is there a break-even point on, let's say, rents $2,600 a month or $2,900 a month? I think we can all sit here and get our heads around that number. Is there a break-even point on the monthly payment at that range? And if there is, and it doesn't seem wild, then why wouldn't I do it? How much is the cash? What's the road to that? Is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal? So let's hop in. I'm going to show a screen share. We'll split the screen here. Let's hop in. I'll walk you through those three scenarios and we can get context from there. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this part is you can see my numbers on the screen here. It's a little simpler than it looks, so I'll keep you on track. I think this is simple and complicated at the same time. I want to show you one scenario, explain the context, and then I'll show you the other, which is for food for thought reasons. But what we're looking at here is we are looking at saying, can you get your head around, I don't know, Sarasota, Florida, Lakewood Ranch, wherever it is, a mature home at paying $2,900 a month. I know people are getting absorbent now, but I think $2,900 makes sense to the average person. So we're targeting a monthly payment of $2,900 cash aside. First scenario we're gonna look at is, what if I put 5% down on a home? What is that same home where I could go shop that would have a better than not chance of equaling what the rent trade-off would be at $2,900? And what that looks like this day and age, and depending on what your perspective, I don't know what that means to you, but on these interest rates, that's a $350,000 house. So we're running at a 7.3% interest rate. Again, I don't know your credit score. I don't know your personal history. I just wanted to start conservative here. And what you're looking at is to buy yourself the ability to have a $2,900 a month thing and get out of that rent and start owning something. It's going to cost you $17,500 down payment, which would be your simple 5% of $350K math. And then, but what it's actually going to cost you is it's going to cost you $28,000, give or take. Because the way to look at this in my mind is that the $17,500, if you have it, it's still yours. That's paying towards something. It's paying down something. It is not going away. It's a savings account of sorts. The difference between $17,000 and $28,000 is not coming back to you. And that is your closing cost. That's your, I mean, maybe some prepaid items are in there, but this 7,000 bucket is not coming back to you. That 2%, whatever that is, 2+%, is not coming back. So there's ways to look at it to say, does it actually come back from owning that home that grows in other areas? And that's what we're going to look at. But that's, to me, is the big thing. I don't know, a couple of years ago, right, which those interest rates, in my opinion, cheaper than a car loan interest rate, I don't know if we're returning to that world ever. I don't know if this world's going to stay forever, but I think it's somewhere in between probably. But what this simply being lower, this being in the 5s or something, means that this house is a very different price. And if this house is a very different price, then, or the buying power rather in that house is a different price, then it's just a matter of, this thought exercise always makes sense. But does the current timing of the scenario that we sit in today for your family model of whatever you have going on, whatever your interest areas are and your family circumstances, does that simply work? Like, would you be able to go to the market you want and do that versus what's available for rent? And that's what we're talking about here. And then there's a lot of ways to figure out everything in between. And my whole background's in economics. My whole career, pretty much up until 4 or 5 years ago, I was working in corporate finance, and I was around a lot of people that had a high monthly annual income, a monthly and annual income. And what I saw very clearly, especially in dual income, like ambitious households, a lot of people can afford a lot of money a month and have a pretty consistent way of guaranteeing and backing that money. W-2 income, right? And a long tenure of work, knowing that they're probably going to be good there, right? But even people that make a lot of money on W-2 because it's so inefficient potentially, really hard to come up with cash. Unless you're just an unbelievable saver. And if you save a long time just to put it all into a house, like, you might not be able to do it again. So I think that's our conversation here is, would people rather pay $4,000 a month versus come up with $30K one time? So I want to discuss that idea. Let me hop for just a second here and talk about, just to show you the difference. So this is what you look at in the same scenario of, mouse is stuck, of the same exact price house. If you put down, instead of $28,000, if you gave $45,000 total to close that home, and that included, again, because interest rate didn't change or whatever, same price house, that includes a lot more down payment, right? So you're still storing more money away that doesn't go away. But all you're going to gain in monthly payment is about $200 a month. More equity, but $200,000 a month by giving that much more money. So is that, $17K? Is that something you want to come up with to save $200 a month? And then I think that's what we're floating in here, right? There's risk mitigation because you owe less. It's less fragile if something happens with your family or something like that. But that's what we're running with here. So I'll show you one more. So if you're more sensitive to the being like, oh, that doesn't matter to me at all, right? Like, I'd rather save liquidity, where I fall a lot in that line a lot of times. Now, 3.5% would, the difference between the 28K, the first scenario, it would be $7,000 less is what you're running with here. But look at the payment. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so that's what I wanted to overview, right? I think that's like, this is an is what it is situation. I don't know how I would feel depending on various different areas I've lived in my life where 350 in a certain market, I don't know if that would satiate the need. But you also know a lot, you need to know a lot about like what the rental market's doing too, is like, could you do what you're trying to do better renting versus buying? And then what's your world to that liquidity conversation? Because what you can do is you can look at a couple scenarios. One, I wanted to say that on the closing cost piece, right? The big thing here, and a lot of people talk about this, is if you don't buy, you never start the appreciation gain, the appreciation potential. The idea that that house just goes up in value in the right market. And I know for me, I think I bought my first house at 22, and I think I had a family member that passed away that I used the IRA as a gift that was that I received as a benefit to them passing away, passed down to me, and that was able to buy my first house in St. Petersburg, Florida. Barely got in, terrible rates, terrible terms, everything, but it was the little bit of equity, nothing that moved mountains, but it was the $40,000 of doing two things. Is what it does is it's a lot more efficient of a savings account for the average young person, in my opinion, to be just paying your mortgage and not getting kicked out, and that paying a differential in what the mortgage was versus what you owe. Now, less interest rates do more impact, but still, than trying to just save money in a savings account every month. Just simply being like, I got to pay my mortgage on time. It's a forced savings account. That's the way I like to think about it. But the magic about real estate is that while doing that, right, the first 5 years are not moving mountains on that difference. But while doing that, what happens is that home might go up $20,000 in value while you pay down. So what if you only paid down 5, 6, 7K, which is very realistic with bad interest rates, but the home went up 20K. If you can exit that based on real estate fees in a conservative way, then that's your down payment for the next one. And that's how I did my first one. And then you get lucky one time and you get that 200K once. And that's what I found to be making the first one happen. And then being really smart about what to do with that one windfall you got. You might never have to go back. And I think that liquidity, I think, is exciting. And if you never do it, you never start the appreciation. I don't take pride in owning a home necessarily, right? It costs money to own the home all the time, every day. But the appreciation, there's not many things that grow like that you don't need to know that much about. If it's your homestead, you're already there. You live there, right? So I think appreciation could be one of the biggest things that mitigates closing cost, right? So 17K to 28, right? We have $12,000, $11,000 that you're giving away technically, right? So I think appreciation could mitigate that. And then you look at like, okay, so renting a home, what are non-refundable deposits, or do I lose anything actually renting the home? Do I get it all back? Do I lose it? Pet deposits, what's in there, right? Like not just the appreciation loss of potential gain, right? That's nothing that exists. You're losing the opportunity cost. I'm saying actual money. If the closing costs are 7K, is renting free? Like, do you get it all back? I'm saying as far as actual deposits. That's one thing to look at, and then that conversation starts to get a little smaller, right? Maybe you have non-refundable deposits, maybe closing costs for 7 to buy a house, so maybe you would have given a landlord 3K already, so maybe that conversation is really 4, and then appreciation only grows a couple points over the first 2 years. You're guaranteed that money's back. The rest of the down payment's sitting in the mortgage somewhere, and then you got to look at what's the total cost of renting versus owning over 3 to 5 years. Does it get better or worse? And that's where appreciation becomes magical. And so you got all those scenarios. So I wanted to do that. And I also, not more importantly, but as importantly, I wanted to see is if you have your head around that conversation, what I wanted to do is try to equip you with a number that you could go to the internet with and be like, within this rough range, 350, 380. I know kind of to be dangerous. I know kind of what I'm going to be working with cash-wise without having to talk to someone, without having to like go to a mortgage guy and be like, hey, and then them keep coming after you, right? I wanted to equip you with that, where you could go to Zillow and be like, oh, interesting, okay, maybe I should explore it now. That's what I would want to do before I reached out to a salesy kind of person. So that's what this conversation was for as well. All right, my friends, that's a wrap for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please hit that subscribe button if you've not already done so. If you did enjoy it, just the best way to see all of our new releases. Again, my name is Adam Hancock, and we have a couple other interesting items if you want to get more involved. One of those is a newsletter. So we release about 2 newsletters a month. If you're on this email list, there's one in the middle of the month, one at the beginning. They're very different than anything you're going to get on YouTube, and they're different from each other. Secondly, we have a free tools and guides tab on the website that has a plethora of relocation guides, analytical tools. We're going to pour a lot more into that bucket as well, but you can have all of that at your access at thesunshinestateco.com. And finally, if you are in the real estate market, buying, selling, investing, new construction, does not matter. Now we're 20 years out, and we can assist you in any way. If you resonated with this kind of vibe of our content, our brokerage is even more unique than our YouTube, but they're really not in a silo from each other. So please, at the very least, vet that out independently through our website or grab a conversation with my broker, Tana, to see if we might be a good fit for you. I think you'd be surprised by kind of the format if you're used to the regular real estate industry. And most importantly, thank you so much for watching today's video. We'll see you on the next one.